Hi, it's Walker&Williams here, and today we're going to be talking about inflation, and I'm going to explain the basic concept of inflation and why it makes the rich richer and the poor poorer. It's taken a lot longer to set this video up because I've had to wait for Billy to stop laughing at my picture, particularly my picture of the Queen. He thought that was very, very funny, and my version of a CD, and he didn't laugh so hard at the house, but so it's taken a long time for Billy to get over that, and once he got up off the floor, we could start filming. So inflation, what is inflation? Very basically, it is the costs of goods and services going up or the value of money going down. Both mean the same thing. It's generally seen as, in layman terms, it's seen as things getting more and more expensive, but they're not actually getting more and more expensive. It's just that the value of the money that you have is getting less and less. So what a pound buys today is slightly less than what a pound was worth and what a pound bought yesterday. Why is this important and how did it happen? So for hundreds of years, money has bought the same stuff for hundreds of years. So a loaf of bread in the 1600s cost the same as it did in the 1700s and so on and so forth. It was only when President Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard on that fateful day, the 9th of August, 1971, that the world changed forever, and most people don't even know why or how. So back in the good old days, the dollar was backed by gold. It was a gold standard currency. So what that means is you could actually, in theory, go into a bank before the 9th of August 1971 and demand gold for your dollar. All the other world currencies in first world countries, so the franc at the time, the pound, the sterling, and all other monies were tied to the US dollar. So the US dollar was tied to gold and all the other currencies were tied to the dollar, so they were therefore also tied to gold. What did that mean? It meant that the government couldn't mess around with money and they couldn't print more of it, because if you only had a kilo of gold and $1 was worth a kilo of gold, you could only have $1. If you wanted to create more dollars, you had to either buy or mine more gold. So it meant that the price of goods and services didn't fluctuate very much at all and everything was stable. What changed? To fund the Vietnam War in the 1970s, it was a very unpopular war, as we all know from history and from films, etc. Very unpopular in America at the tail end of the swinging 60s, and there was massive public discord against the government, the American government, going into the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War went ahead anyway, and to finance the Vietnam War, Nixon knew that he wouldn't be able to tax people because they'd riot even more in the streets. So some very, very clever gentlemen, dangerous but clever, said, well, why don't we temporarily, just temporarily, take the US dollar off the gold standard and break that link between how much physical gold we have and how many dollars we have. Break that for a minute, print a lot more dollars and use those dollars to pay for the guns and the bullets and the aeroplanes and everything else that we need to fight the war in Vietnam. The problem is that once the lid was off the cookie jar, the American government spent and spent and spent and spent. They spent so much and so quickly, in fact, that they weren't able, or didn't have the appetite either, to go back onto the gold standard. So it just meant that whenever they needed money, they could print it. And you will have seen that quite recently in 2007, 2008, 2009, with what they now call QE, which is short for quantitative easing. Well, that's just fancy words for printing more money. So if the government need money for a new road, for anything else, and they don't want to tax the people, they just print it. So why should you care? Well, the reason you should care is because for every Bank of England £10 note, and believe it or not, I drew that, it's not a forgery, for every £10 note in circulation, every one the government adds, the ones in your pocket become worth slightly less. And they print another one, and your £10 note becomes worth slightly less. Why? Because there's more of them in the system. And the more there is of something, the less it's worth. As you know, with diamonds, they're quite rare. You don't find them on the street, so they're worth a lot of money, and they're held back in vaults and protected and so on and so forth. And they're rare, so they're worth a lot of money. Dirt is everywhere. You can go to your local park and get a load of dirt, get as much dirt as you want. Dirt isn't worth a lot of money. If dirt became as rare as diamonds, then dirt would have a similar value to diamonds, and the same. If diamonds started falling out the sky and it was raining diamonds, after a couple of days, diamonds would be worthless. So the more £10 notes in circulation there are, the less each one is worth. So that's why it matters, because it's a way of the government getting you to pay for stuff without even knowing they're doing it. So if they make your money, if they take £1 out of your pocket, there's two ways they can do it. They can physically come and tax you and take that £1 off you, or they can print a lot more £10 notes, meaning your £10 note's worth £1 less. But you never see it. They don't knock on your door, you don't feel it, but you will feel it over time, because when you take that £10 note to a shop and you go to buy something that has cost £10 and now costs £11, you feel that, and where that price increase is because of this printing money. How is the inflation rate calculated? This is a really important point to understand. It's actually done with a real shopping basket. So the government take a list of items, I think it's about 60 items, and they put them in a shopping basket. And then they track the cost of those items. And they're real things like the cost of a CD, the cost of a house, the average cost of the average property in the UK, tampons, an orange, a banana, an apple, and they take these general items and they put them in the shopping basket, and that's how they track inflation. However, they manipulate the interest rate to go along with whatever they're saying. So if they say interest rates, they want interest rates to be a bit higher to get the old people's votes for their savings and that sort of thing, they just take stuff out of the basket that hasn't risen in price very much, and they put more expensive stuff that is rising in price into the basket. So for example, during the pandemic, we all know that the price of toilet roll and the price of hand sanitizer went through the roof if you were lucky enough to be able to get some. If you put the cost of hand sanitizer in the inflation basket, inflation goes up because the price of hand sanitizer is going up. Now, what the government want to do is they quite often want to keep inflation down and tell you that it's not so bad. You're not losing that much money every year, because that's good news for people with money and savings and jobs. So what do? If property prices, for example, are rising too high, they just take property out of the shopping basket. If the price of hand sanitizer is rising too high, they just take it out of the shopping basket and replace it with something else. So you really, really can't trust the inflation rate that we're told on the news and by the government and on official websites like the Bank of England, because it's only what they've concocted it to be. Now they do it under the guise they take, of course, over time things change, so they have to take CDs out and they have to put MP3s in, and then when it was downloads they take MP3s out and they put downloads in, so iTunes or whatever. And that's fair enough, but there is manipulation there, so you'll see that things come out that are still relevant. So why does property go in and then come out? So property's always been relevant. We'll always buy houses, we'll always live in houses. So why would you ever take that out, or why would you ever include it? You wouldn't take it in and out. So there are things that go in and out of the basket that are still relevant, but it's for another purpose. It's to manipulate the perceived inflation rate. I believe at the moment the inflation rate, they're quoting on the Bank of England website today that inflation rate's around 1.5%. I think it's actually closer to 6%. That's my personal opinion. And I don't, believe me, I don't sit under the stairs with a tinfoil hat on. This is just the facts, as scary as they may be. So, August 9th, 1971, America's now off the gold standard, so we can print money. And ever since, all countries have been printing money over and over again. And inflation is getting higher. And every day and every year, your money is becoming less and less. Now, if you look at this over a prolonged period of time, it really becomes stark. So, £10,000 in 1950, how much do you think that is today? So if, for example, you sold your house in 1950 and So you've bought your house in 1950, or your parents bought a house in 1950 for £10,000. How much do you think they would have to sell it for today just to break even? Not including the cost of their mortgage payments and the interest on their mortgage if they had one, not including the maintenance on the property, not including any improvements they put on the property, not including maintaining it, new roof, painting it, gutters, all that sort of stuff, utilities and all that. Take all of that away just to break even on the purchase price. How much do you think a house that they bought for £10,000 in 1950 they would have to sell for today? £353,000. And that's if you go off the inflation calculator on the Bank of England. I'll put a link in the description below and you can click on it yourself and have some real fun. It's the official Bank of England website. You can type in an amount of money and then you can set 2 dates, and the Bank of England themselves will tell you how much that money has lost value or how much money you would need to replace that. So £10,000 in 1950 buys £353,000 worth of stuff today. So to put it another way, and this is really scary, if you had £353,000 worth of savings in 1950, it's worth 10 grand today. So it's almost worthless. You've lost all that money. You've done nothing wrong. You've kept it in a savings account. Let's assume for a second that it's earned no interest, or it's earned a little bit of interest, but that's offset by the fact that that's not a real number. You've lost all of your money and you've done nothing wrong. All you've done is put cash in the bank and waited. And it's dwindled away and dwindled away. And that is why it's important. And that is why the poor generally get poorer and the rich generally get richer, because they understand how to use inflation to their benefit, as do governments. Inflation rewards borrowers because the amount of money you owe, the debt, is becoming worth less and less and less. Imagine you bought a house in 1950 for £10,000 and you had 100% mortgage, interest only until today. To clear your mortgage for the house that you bought that is worth 350 grand, so it's not a dump. Bear in mind that it's a £350,000 house today. That same house was 10 grand in 1950. You bought it in 1950 for £10,000. You had 100% mortgage, 10 grand, and it's interest only. Today, to clear your mortgage on this massive £350,000 house, you just need 10 grand. And that is why, and that is how inflation helps borrowers and punishes savers. Okay, to flip it on its head, and by the way, you might be thinking, well, 1950, that was a long, long time ago. So what are you talking about? Of course, over that longer period of time, the money's gone down. Okay, well, 2000, the year 2000, only 21 years ago. So if you're 21, it was the year you were born. The year 2000, to me, it seems like a minute ago. £10,000 in 2000, if you had that in the bank as savings and you've earned no interest and done nothing with it, only in the year 2000, it's worth £5,896.60 today. So it's almost halved since just the year 2000. So you can see, you don't even have to leave it that long before your money is halved. And people who work really, really hard for money, cash, it's like it's sand pouring through your fingers. It's becoming worth less and less every day. They're putting it in the bank because that's what they're told to do at school. They're savers and they keep saving and putting money in the bank. And then in 50 years' time, they look back and they've got 10 grand worth of stuff they can buy when they started with 350,000. I'm going to probably do another video on this if you're interested. If you've got any questions, please leave a comment in the question below. And if you want to know what you can do to fight inflation or how you can take advantage of what is a dangerous and horrible thing, how you can take advantage, protect yourself, protect your family, but also benefit from the power of inflation, please leave a comment in the question below. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and when that video is ready, you'll be notified. Thanks ever so much for watching. I hope this made sense. If you have got any questions, please do leave the comments, because I do love to make sure that everybody understands what I'm trying to get across. Thanks for watching. See you later.